Something really interesting that happens when you've been walking with God for a long period of time. When we first come to Christ, we hear about the joy that God brings and the peace that he brings into our lives and the purpose that he has and all the things that he wants to do in our lives. And don't get me wrong, all of that is completely true. But as you start to walk with God for any amount of time, you start to realize that as much as those things are true, that walking with God over the long haul is really not rooted in excitement or even in inspiration. Is you realize that what this entire journey boils down to is one thing, and that's endurance. Because sometimes it's about staying faithful to the seasons that are quiet, the seasons that are even discouraging or confusing. And there are quite a few. The longer we do walk with God, you start to realize that He is shaping our character and refining our hearts and teaching us to trust Him in deeper ways that we never thought we actually could. And if I'm honest, that process does not always feel easy, but it's definitely needed and it's definitely worth it. This year in the summer, by God's grace, it will be 12 years for me of salvation. And so there are a few things that I've learned along the way and still learning that I hope to share and encourage you as you continue in this journey. So the first thing is that faith does really become less about feelings and more about our commitment to Christ. As a young believer, you're inspired like all the time. You're excited about everything. You see God everywhere. But I do believe that maturing in your faith really boils down to trusting God even when those emotions are quiet. It's choosing to stay committed to Him regardless of how you're feeling. It's choosing to show up when you don't feel like it. It's choosing to pray and read your Bible even when you are feeling completely discouraged. And sometimes it's hard to utter out words in prayer. And it's hard to continue believing in those promises that are in the Bible, but you choose to do it anyways. It's choosing to serve even when sis over there just pissed you off, because that's real. That's real. And so a lot of things really do become about choice and commitment and choosing to say, God, I'm committed to you, even though my flesh isn't wanting to do these things. I'm still going to stay committed to you regardless of how I feel. Now, the second thing I wanted to remind you that I have learned myself over time is the fact that our understanding of God does really become deeper. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not going to know everything about God. And I think we have to also realize the fact that his ways are not as simple or as predictable as we think they are. In fact, even though we know a lot of things about God, it doesn't mean that we know everything about him, but we can hold on to the things that we do know. And I think it's understanding as well that even in those moments that we don't necessarily understand, that there's still a purpose in those seasons and in whatever it is that God is doing. I've always tried to hold on to what I do know about God's character, the fact that he is a good God, the fact that he is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so in seasons where things are a little bit more discouraging or challenging, or maybe even when I'm spiritually dry, I can hold on to the truth that I do know about him. And when I remind myself of that, I remind myself that this is the same God that, was coming through for me when I was going through X, Y, and Z. And so who's to say that he's going to stop now? He's the same God. So why am I acting as if I'm now serving a completely different God who has changed? He hasn't. And the third thing that I wanted to share with you today is the fact that endurance does become a part of the journey. Guys, life is hard and it can be long, especially when those long, hard seasons are just stretched out. And the fact that we are promised trials doesn't necessarily make it easier. No matter how long you've been saved for, no one is ever excited about the trials that are going to come. I don't think I'm ever going to sit there and be like, well, can't wait for the next trial to come. There's always going to be those unfavorable circumstances. There's always going to be those moments where you experience some kind of pain or loss. There's always going to be moments where God does feel far away. But you have to learn to endure through all of those seasons as they do come along the way. And again, they're going to come. The longer you've been saved for, you're going to experience these things. But you also realize something really important, that these are also reflective moments and there are growth opportunities as well. There are ways for you to learn to love those people that are hard to love. There are ways for you to trust in God when things are not as good. There are ways for you to connect with Him and seek Him more. I would even go as far to say that I think in those moments where endurance is so needed are also those moments where we really do realize or are reminded how much we really do need Jesus and how much we have to keep abiding in Him because, again, life is hard. And we try to go out there and try to do things without Christ because we think, okay, God's not taking control in this area. And so I'm going to just try to do things myself. But we realize very quickly that it doesn't work. And so it's coming back to realize that we really do have a need for Christ. The longer I've been saved, the more I realize I need Jesus even more. I really can't do anything without Him. You even start to realize that you know things, but then there's so much more that you don't know. And it's something that I keep realizing every single year that I have been saved. And that's important because faith is not about how you start off. There's a lot of people that start off the walk really strong, they're on fire for God, and there's all this zeal, and they want to talk about Jesus all the time. But it's really about when you get into the mundane thing and you're going through the circumstances that are coming and you're enduring through those trials and you're still coming out of those trials for however long as they may last for at times and you're still choosing to continue on with God, even through these ever changing seasons. And that's when you know that you're maturing in your faith. I really do want to encourage you that if you've been walking with God for any amount of time and your faith maybe looks a little different and it feels a little different than it used to, it doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. Okay. But that doesn't necessarily make it less meaningful. In fact, sometimes those quieter seasons with God are the ones in which God is doing the deepest work in us. Really want you to hold on to that and hold on to the fact that walking with God is not just about the beginning of the journey, but it's about the entire race. And sometimes the most powerful part of the race is choosing to still show up and keep walking with Him year after year after year. So I want to really know, what have you noticed in your own faith journey as the years have gone by, or maybe even as the months have gone by? And what are some things that God has been teaching you in this season of your journey? Leave those comments in the section below. And until next time, I hope you stay encouraged and finish this right.